Well, good morning. How's everybody? Excellent. I'm so glad to hear it, or see it, as the case may be. Look at the rest of you hiding behind your non-cameras. There's always the brave, and then they're not brave. There we go. I knew I could guilt some of you into turning it on. Thank you, Steve, for feeling guilty and turning your camera on. All right, so I wanted to do something a little bit different this morning as it relates to profit share, because I could teach profit share a bazillion different ways, and typically what I do is kind of walk through kind of what it is, how it is, what are the strategies, kind of how it works, what the math is. But today, what I really thought I would spend more of our time together doing is really just answering the questions that you have around profit share. The title of this morning is called Retire on Profit Share. And for some that may seem far-fetched. For some that may seem like a little bit of a stretch, right? And I can tell you it did to me too. And over time, profit share is like the compound interest of our world, right? Of the Keller Williams world. The sooner you start and the more attention you pay it in terms of making additions, over time, what happens is that all just starts to compound and start to mean something, right? How many of us have received our first profit share check for 17 cents or $1.42, or if you're really impressive, that first one is in the tens of dollars. Woo, baby. But I did a little bit of math for you, just because I want you to understand why profit share is important to me and why I continue to pay attention to it. So as you know, the 21st of the month is profit share month, which means about 2.5 weeks ago or so, we had the latest 21st of the month. And I want to read to you a number that made me smile. That number is $18,692. And that's the amount of money that got deposited into mine and Debbie's joint account for profit share last month on the 21st. $18,692. If I can have that show up and don't have to do a whole lot for it, I am down with that. Because what's interesting is that it now only half of that is mine, right? But that number as a whole is not terribly far off from the deposits that I get from my property manager for the whole other business of owning real estate investment properties that I have. Right. And so I start to look at what I had to spend and what it took to manage and grow that business to start returning me 20 grand a month or so. And I look at what we had to do from a profit share perspective to earn $18,692 in a month. They're different. And I kind of like the profit share version better. And so to put this in perspective, we had our best profit share year ever in 2020, $123,074. Now, again, I only get half of that. So my take on that is $61,500. But it's $61,500 that showed up for my household like magic, parsed out over 12 payments on the 21st of each month. So I preface our whole conversation with that this morning because I encourage you, like this, I want your numbers to be bigger and higher and better than this. I want you to put me to shame in terms of profit share. And you can, for one very simple reason. What is that reason? What do you have that I don't really have anymore?
Database.
Well, I do have a database.
A network of potential agents.
Yes, you have the relationships, right? You guys have the relationships that I don't really have all that much anymore. right? The people I practiced real estate with, I think some of them truly think that some of you locked me in a cave about 10 years ago and have never let me out, right? Because people don't see me very often. Now that's my own doing, right? That's not boo-hoo. That's my own doing. And yet you guys are out in the field every single day. And so you're building those relationships, which gives you that opportunity, right? So profit share means something to me because $61,000 in a year, that just shows up and I didn't have to do a whole lot for it. Like I said, I'll take that every single day and 3 times on Tuesday. It funds cool stuff, right? It funds, I mean, for that money for us, we've taken trips on that money. We've purchased things when things were tighter and my treadmill broke. We dove into profit share to make sure that I had a treadmill to run on every morning, right? We use that to help people. We use it to fund other businesses. We use those funds to do things that maybe we couldn't do or wouldn't do as simply or easily if we didn't have those funds show up. So that's kind of my intro to our profit share conversation. I want you to understand that it is real money. When you pay attention to it, it is real money. I shudder to think what it could be today if I paid better attention to it over the last 10 years or so. I didn't, and yet you can. So with that, like I said, I want to spend really most of our time kind of answering questions and helping you develop some strategies for the growth of your own profit share. It almost seems a shame to hang your license at Keller Williams Realty and not participate in profit share, right? It kind of seems like just like a missed opportunity. So let's talk about what that looks like for you, what questions you have, what's holding you back if you feel like you're not diving in. What would be helpful? I want to make this about what would help you. So again, like in anything else, just unmute if you have a thought or a question, and I will call on you as you unmute. Mr. David Lee.
So I'm all for, retirement income as I am a little more progressed in my years. So what I'm trying to understand is, Lisa and I are both new to this whole thing. How do we go and find people? I mean, I hear people that it's their one thing. And I'm trying to understand the strategies. Like, do you do Facebook stuff? Do you do, what do you do other than, okay, anybody that I've transacted with, which is not a great number, I've said, Keller Williams is an awesome place, and so on and so forth. And then secondly, we've had a little bit of frustration of, okay, we think we have somebody, and then we kick them over to the office, and maybe we don't know what happens after that.
Yeah. All right. So I'll address the first thing first and the second thing second. So the first thing first is kind of where do you find people and how do you like what's the strategy for turning those relationships into opportunities? So my answer to where do you find people is kind of everywhere, right? And you start with people that you're doing business with. I don't necessarily encourage people to say things to people on the other side of a transaction before, during, or even after a transaction about our company. I don't encourage that. And here's why. If the conversation during or even after a transaction is about how much you love Keller Williams and why they should be here, people are less excited over time. If that's not what they're interested in hearing, they're less excited when you're on the other side of a transaction. And that's not what you want to set up, right? That's not what you want to set up. You always want people to be excited when you're on the other side of the transaction. So instead, what I would focus on is being the best professional that you possibly can so that people are always saying good things about you and your business. I know that sounds like a bizarre place to start from a strategic perspective in terms of growing your profit share, except if you're the sourpuss or the grump or the person that never gets the buyers over the finish line, like if you're not a pleasant professional that people actually want to do business with, your ability to attract people is diminished. So the first thing you have to do is be an attractive person. And by that, I mean, be a solid professional and focus on the growth of your business. Be a great listing agent. Be a great buyer's agent. Be the agent that people in our community want on the other side of a transaction. And the reason that's step number one is because then as we move into kind of strategy 2 and 3, as you start to say something, now again, and it's not about Keller Williams, but as you start to say the things I'm about to share with you, people actually pay attention because they respect you and they respect your opinion, right? But that's something you have to earn. You have to build that. That's a muscle that you have to just kind of keep working out as you continue to grow your business. So step number 1 is be awesome. Like be an awesome real estate professional. Combined with that, continue to grow your business, right? If you're new or newer in the industry, one of the things that is attractive to people is watching your growth because it creates a natural curiosity. Wow, I didn't know who that person was. And now all of a sudden, a year later, their name is everywhere. Like, what's that about? Right, and so if you do that right, I'll tell you that was my first year of the business. I went from relative obscurity. I don't know if there's anybody on this call who can vouch for me on that. Oh, Debbie's on the call. So I went from relative obscurity to like somebody who people paid attention to, not because of any other reason than I dove into the business and I created business opportunities and closed business with colleagues, right? So if you don't do that, people don't quite know who you are and they don't listen to the things that you might have to offer or share because you're still in obscurity. Go ahead, Deb.
In a very short period of time, and I'll say it was 12 months because I wasn't actually paying a lot of attention at the time. I know that it went from who is this kid to how is he doing that?
Yeah, that is true. It was funny. I can remember one story. I ran an ad in the local paper, and it said it had a bunch of my properties, my new listings on the bottom, but at the top it said something about, like, my tagline for a while was, call Rick Scott, find out more about the agent all of everyone's talking about, or all of Ridgefield's talking about, or something like that. And that came out on a Thursday, and Friday morning were broker open houses, which I didn't attend. I actually, for whatever reason, but a lot of people in my office went out and attended them, and they came back and came to me and said, "Oh my goodness, your ad caused quite a stir." And I thought, like, among who? Like, what are you talking about? So, well, all anyone could talk about at the open houses this morning was, who is he and why does he think that everyone's talking about him? Like, how dare he put in the newspaper that everyone's talking about him? And one of my colleagues, so what was asked at the open house is, well, who does he think is talking about him? Like, who's he even referencing? And one of my colleagues said, well, you all are. So minimally, he's got you. Right, but it's kind of not the point. The point is, I just always think that's a funny story. So the point is, do good real estate first and foremost, right? Because then your opinion starts to matter more. Strategy number 2, as you're continuing to do good real estate, whether that's 2 transactions in a year or 52 transactions in a year, as you do good real estate, start to have slightly different conversations with your co-brokes. And what that means is, don't name drop Keller Williams. Instead, results drop, success drop, training drop, event drop. Here's what I mean. If I'm doing a transaction with Linda Dunsmore, and we have and her seller is really stubborn, right, about a price, and she and I have had a couple of different conversations around, man, if my buyer's willing to buy, your seller's willing to sell, but there's a struggle. Sometimes listing agents even admit, look, the seller's not going lower than this, and that may or may not be valid, and yet that's their number, right? So let's get your buyers up. And so we've had conversations around the struggle of helping sellers see value in a lower number. So we finish the transaction. I thank Linda profusely. Maybe I give her a little closing gift. Maybe the closing gift is a Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. Maybe it's a One Thing book. Maybe it's any of the books that we've talked about. It doesn't even have to be a KW book, right? Maybe I just give her a thank you for being on the other side of this, because without her, I wouldn't have gotten paid, right? So I think it's a kind of a cool thing to thank your co-brokes, period, regardless of the perhaps ulterior motive down the road of profit share, because it continues to build the relationship. And then I'm going to go back and look at my training calendar in my market center and see when the next opportunity for seller strategy sessions or price reduction conversations or some version of pricing happens. And if it's not on the calendar, I'm going to go to my team leader and say, hey, you know what? I just had a transaction with Linda Dunsmore, who was awesome. And I think one of the things that might interest her is some kind of a session, an educational session on price reductions. It's just something she and I struggled with in this particular transaction. So could we put one on the calendar? Guess what, guys? We'll never say no to that. We'll create a if we don't have a training, we'll create one. And we'll put it on as quickly as we possibly can on the calendar so that you then can go back, right? So now I've gone to my team leader, said that because I didn't see one on the calendar. It gets scheduled for next Friday. And I get to go back to Linda and say, hey, Linda, guess what? I just happened to notice on my office training calendar that there is going to be this session, and we're having this guest speaker come in from wherever to talk about the exact same thing that you and I struggled with this past property at 123 Main Street. I wondered if you would attend as my guest. And then Linda gets to either say yes, no, or I'll think about it. But that's not the point. The point is, I remembered that there was something specific in Linda's business dealings with me that I think I can assist with by inviting her to come and check this out. And so I invite her. Guys, it doesn't matter if she attends or not. It's the invitation that creates the relationship. If she does attend, then we're into strategy number 3, which is allow people to experience what we have to offer. Right? We are an experiential company. There's some things about our organization that are relatively unique, that when you just talk at people, when you talk at someone about them, it sounds like blah, 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 right? When you say we have great training, everybody thinks they have great training, whether they've experienced it or not, right? Great training in another organization might be there's one class per month, come hell or high water, there is definitely one class per month. And if no one's ever experienced anything different, well, one class a month is certainly better than no classes a month. And so that might be seen as great training. So be careful that you're not just looking to compare apples to oranges, right? It's not about how better we are. It's not about we have better this or better that, or our technology or our culture or our community or whatever. It's because there's always the other side of that story. When you live somewhere else, it's hard to see that maybe there is something different that could be better. So instead, just keep building the relationship and offering opportunities. Family reunion, mega camp, regional events are everyday stuff. For a lot of people in a lot of organizations, the stuff we do just every single day is unique enough or different enough to get them thinking perhaps in a different way. When you can tie it into something specific, right? Maybe I'm doing a transaction with Nancy, and at some point Nancy talks. We're both standing at the inspection because Nancy stopped by the inspection, right, when I was there with my buyers, and she just happened to mention the want of buying an investment property, or maybe she's in the middle of searching for an investment property. Well, see, I would hear that differently. I wouldn't just hear that as Nancy wants to buy an investment property. I'd hear that as, if I can offer Nancy an opportunity to learn more about buying investment properties, or perhaps an into our world, which says you don't have to do it on your own. If you're nervous about doing it on your own, you can just dive in and we can do it together, right? I'm going to start thinking about how I can help Nancy be the person and the business owner and the wealth builder that she wants to be. How can I assist? How can I lend a hand? How can I make a suggestion about something she could listen to? Maybe I just listened to some great podcast about investing. Maybe it has nothing to do with Keller Williams Realty. But here's strategically what I might do. If I listened to something and it had nothing, it didn't come from one of our classes, didn't come from anybody in the office, it wasn't Ben Kinney or Gary or anybody. What I might do is I might let the week go by and then circle back to Nancy to say, hey, you know what? I just listened to this awesome podcast that was suggested to me in my office's 9 a.m. Zoom calls, daily 9 a.m. Zoom calls. And I listened to it, and all I could think about was you, because it was all about jumping off and buying that first investment property. Can I share this link with you? Would you go ahead and take a listen to it? Nancy's not going to say no to that, because she already shared she's interested in doing that, right? And then a week later, I get to go back and say, hey, just curious, did you listen to that podcast? I would love to, do you have like 20 minutes for a Zoom one-on-one so that we could kind of download each other on that podcast? Because I haven't done that either, and I'm looking to do it. Or I have done it, and maybe I could share with some information with you. Or there's we're doing another investor seminar. And so now Nancy's on my mind, or I have in my notes that Nancy equals investment opportunity. That's my kind of my in with her. And I invite her to the next investor seminar. Do you see what I'm trying to help you do here? I'm trying to help you create and maintain relationships, but also get specific about those relationships so that you can figure out how you can specifically help someone be a better version of themselves. How can you specifically assist them with the tools and the stuff that you have available to you that maybe they don't have available to them, right? Sometimes we make assumptions that everyone has access to the same people and the same tools and the same stuff. And I have learned over time that is simply not true, right? It's just not true. Now, is this a longer version of getting a referral to a team leader? Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. But do you see that by the time you actually get to that point, the referral actually means something. Now Dan and Steve and Carlos can actually have a conversation based on facts about how to help Linda, how to help Nancy. Because I'm going to tell you what, one of the things that I stopped doing a really long time, and this may sound like heresy to you, maybe you can't believe I'm going to say it. I stopped believing that Keller Williams Realty is the best place for everyone to grow their version of their real estate business. I just stopped believing that. I believe it for me, but everyone has to make their own decisions. And when you pull back from that, it stops you from like the diarrhea of the mouth that sometimes happens, right? It's awesome to think that this place is awesome. I do think it's awesome. I do think it's the best place to grow a real estate business. I've been other places and I've spoken to people who have been everywhere else. But for me, I respect someone who's at Coldwell Banker or at Sotheby's or at Berkshire Hathaway or at wherever enough that I never want to make them feel wrong or stupid for being someplace else. Instead, I just want to offer assistance. Does that help? I know it was a long answer.
Yeah, no, that definitely helps. It's not as fast a path as I was thinking I might want to be on, you know, considering my advanced age these days.
Are you aging faster than you were a couple of weeks ago? My goodness, you seem so concerned all of a sudden.
It feels like it, especially with so few houses on the market.
Well, there you go. Welcome to real estate. It's like being president. It ages you very fast. I'm actually 26. So that's kind of a strategy that you can utilize. I find it to be a very successful strategy, and it's a strategy of build the relationships, get specific, and then utilize the talents of your team leader.
So Rick, one of the things we talked about in coaching with Jen, though, was that some people have, and I can't remember the gentleman's name. I think it's Dan Layden.
Yes, Layden.
He actually takes ads out on Facebook about, do you want to be an agent? And trying to get people in, you know, at the top of the funnel, if you will. And I'm just wondering how that strategy works and you know, what the best way to go with maybe that kind of strategy.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So another strategy is strangers, right? It's no different than finding buyers and sellers, right? You can go the path of your database, which is all of your Mets, or you can go the path of strangers, which is open houses and expireds, right? So this is just the other version of the strategies we just talked about. If you're not working with the people that you already know, and you're focusing on the strangers, you can do a bunch of different things. You can, like David said, you can run some Facebook ads to see if you can attract new people to the business. Eric asks, can we refer candidates even before they have their real estate license? We actually encourage that, right? We encourage that because then we can help guide them through the process, which just solidifies the relationship to you and to the market centers before they're kind of released out into the world of they may start hearing other stuff. So yeah, we encourage you as soon as they are interested to connect them with your team leaders. Now your team leaders may not necessarily set up an hour-long sit down with someone who hasn't even started the class yet, but there may be an opportunity for a phone call to give them the next couple of steps in terms of direction and follow up with them and then create that sit down a little later on as they're closer to receiving their actual license, right? So, and the question, how does that work? You know, Dan's done it very successfully. Jeff Stella, he receives $2,000 to $3,000 a month in profit share. He did that almost exclusively. They weren't really his own relationships. He was teaching for a real estate school and utilized his opportunities to connect with brand new agents there, and built a bit of a downline for himself, and then kind of stopped, and then kind of half retired from real estate, right? Because he's focused on something else in his world right now, and yet he still earns $2,000 to $3,000 a month in profit share. So working the stranger side of things is just as valid as not. Now, remember, if you're attracting brand new agents to the company, well, there's usually a period of time where they're getting themselves set, so they're not closing business perhaps as fast as someone who is already productive at another brokerage. So again, the strategies are different, and yet pushing it all out there and being attractive either way gets you to the same place eventually. Here's another strategy I'll throw your way. If you are unwilling or unable to take the longer path that I described earlier, and you'd like a shorter path, you can continue to do good business with other people and simply refer those people to your team leader with a little smidge of information, right? So I do a transaction with Alice, who's at Coldwell Banker, God forbid, but at Coldwell Banker, and I get to go back to my team leader and say, hey, I just had an awesome transaction with a woman who I didn't know before. Her name is Alice Farina. I looked her up. She's been around for a while. She's experienced. She's professional. Frankly, without some of the things that she's experienced and her sharing some of those things during our transaction, I'm not sure that we would have gotten it closed. So I am massively grateful to her for what she brought to the table. And she's an absolute dear to talk to. I mean, she's personable and I can't gush enough about her. Could you give her a call? Your team leaders will never say no to that, right? As a matter of fact, the fact that they're not begging you for that, because that's at least an in. Then Dan or Steve or Carlos can make a quick phone call to Alice to say, hey, just wanted to introduce myself. I was just having a conversation with Rick Scott, who, when I tell you, could not say enough good things about you. And I just wanted to call and say thank you. Clearly, thank you for being an awesome professional, because it makes everybody's lives easier. And we are so grateful that you were on the other side of, did I lose you? No, okay, there we go. We're on the other side of that transaction. Maybe that's all they say. Maybe it's not. Maybe they strike up a conversation, right? Maybe they say thank you and then they have a follow-up call a week or two later, right? Your team leaders have strategies based on how the conversations go to best create an opportunity for you to add to your downline. Here's what I want you to remember though. Just like you have conversion rates with buyers and with sellers, where you don't get every listing or you don't sell every buyer a house, your team leaders have conversion rates with your leads. And their conversion rates are anywhere from 3 to 1 to 5 to 1, depending on who and how and production level and time of year sometimes, right? So remember that volume, more equals more in this scenario as well. If you can focus on some volume, what if every time you sold a house, you found something awesome about that other agent and shared it with your team leader? Trust me when I tell you, you're in business with talented team leaders. We simply know that because as our numbers continue to grow, not everybody else's regionally or across the country do. So we know we're in business with talented team leaders. We know we're in business with people who can assist you in growing that downline. be careful that you don't take the mindset of, I had an open house one time and no one came, so therefore open houses don't work, right? And the profit share version is, well, you know, I had a transaction with Alice. I passed Alice to Steve. I know Steve called her, but nothing ever happened. Now, I will say one other thing, and then I think Debbie unmuted and Alice unmuted. You just want to tell us how wonderful you are, Alice Farina.
No, thank you for the accolades. My problem since I've been at KW is I have not been able to get anyone to join so I could share in the profit share. I have given names to Steve, and I know he's followed up. I just can't make it stick for some reason. And and I don't know if this is an accurate comparison, but it seems like a lot of the agents that I do business with are seasoned agents and have been with their companies for a long time, and they just are resistant to consider leaving.
Yeah, agreed. And yet at the same time, I look at you and I look at Nancy and I look at Steve and I look at Linda, and there's probably more. I'm not seeing everybody. I'm looking at Kathy Becerra. I'm looking at Elena. I'm looking at, again, I'm looking at Jackie Yeep. I'm looking at Lisa Bennett, right? So I'm looking at Nellie. I'm looking at Amy. I didn't see Amy down there, right? There are a lot of people on this call who didn't start their careers at Keller Williams Realty, which means they were someplace else first. I probably missed somebody. So if I missed you, I'm sorry, right? And some of those people that I just named are 8 million, 10 million, 12 million, 15 million, $20 million producing agents, right? So the reason I point that out, Alice, is that like all hope is not lost. It is absolutely true that it takes productive agents longer to get an appointment with, have follow-up appointments with, right? Make decisions because they have business going on, A, and B, it sometimes it's tough, right? Sometimes it's tough. Lisa Bennett says she said no the first 2 times that she got phone calls before she even agreed to an appointment, right? So it is a process over time. It's why I think building and developing those relationships and continuing to push things out to say, hey, I thought this might work for you. Hey, I thought this would be helpful for you. Hey, I thought of you when I saw this guest was coming. Like who can you, last minute, when we get off the phone today, off the Zoom today, who can you reach out to say, hey, you know what? You're a social media person. We have this awesome guest from Keller Williams Dubai who's going to speak to us for an hour and a smidge tomorrow. Come and join us. Guys, the Zoom world that we live in today makes it far simpler for people to just kind of zoom in, experience what we're pushing out, and they don't have to show up at the office. They don't have to see people. They don't have to talk to people. Right? They can change their name to iPhone 27, keep their camera off, and have an experience without having to out themselves, right? Because oftentimes that's sometimes what people are afraid of. So I would maximize your ability to invite people to stuff, to events, to trainings, to the things that we do, even if it's dopey stuff, right? Maybe you know someone who kind of likes parties. Well, so invite them to the next social thing we do. You never know what's going to grab somebody. More business-oriented people, invite them to one of our masterminds. Right? Because here's what I do know. Even if those kinds of things are going on where they are, they don't go on at the frequency or the level that we do them here. Right? That I do know. That's not to say that nobody else has training and nobody else does masterminds. But I do know that we do them at a level and a frequency that is unmatched. So let's plug people in. We're also pretty easy talking people, right? There is a reality that every time a guest comes to the table in one of the things we do, one of the things that I hear back through the feedback channels is that particular person was kind of blown away about how much we just shared stuff with each other. how people unmute and say, here's how I do that, or here's the tool I use for that, or here's the script I use that made that simpler, right? That sharing culture and community that we foster and grow inside of our organization is a wow to some people. Some people won't care about it. And yet some people will be like, oh, my stars, like this is where I have to be. So you just never know what's going to be attractive. Go ahead, Debbie.
It's actually a nice tag on to what you've just said. And it's get purposeful about this. So do you have growing your downline on your business plan for 2021? Is it written down on there? And then I love the concept of go small to go big. Don't look at the whole world. Choose 3 or 4 or 5, probably not more than 5 agents who you really would like to be in business with. This is not a manipulation or a playing a game. This is on purpose stuff. So get very purposeful about those 3, 4, 5 people, and then do exactly what Rick just said. Just play that through and invite them periodically, or just talk a little bit about things, or find a book that could be a gift to them, and make it very purposeful. What did I do in February to reach out and take that next step with so-and-so? And then the other thing is, and Rick, you probably can speak to this better in detail. I'm just going to throw it out on the table. There's a way to make this happen more than one at a time, and that is to look at small companies and see the mom and pops or the independents who have 5 or 10 or 12 agents, and bring them over all at once. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. And so the way you do that, so I would absolutely encourage you, if you have a relationship with the owner of a small independent, or this is kind of the strategic side of this, either the owner of the small independent or their best agent, or maybe their second best agent, right? Because typically in a small independent, there's the owner who sometimes is the most productive agent, or sometimes has 1 or maybe 2 other productive agents. If you have relationships with any of those people, you may have influence enough to create an opportunity for our team leaders to sit down with the owner of that small independent. In my personal opinion, your job is always the same. It's to create and nurture those relationships and offer opportunities to help those people be the best versions of themselves possible. In those scenarios, or frankly in any other scenario, but certainly in those scenarios where it involves a brokerage, involve your team leader early, right? Sit down with your team leader and say, hey, you know what? I have a relationship with so-and-so. What's the plan? Can we brainstorm a strategy together to help us move them from where they are and fold them in? Because guys, I can tell you that not only do your team leaders have really smart strategies because they've done it before, Keller Williams Realty International now makes it far simpler for us to annex some of these smaller independents with ways we can structure that. So it's easier than ever for you to convert some of those relationships into potential downline than it was in the past. What other questions do you have?
Rick.
JD.
Yeah, so with the smaller companies, I had approached someone and she said, yeah, but I can't, like, will I be able to keep myself independent within Keller Williams? And I didn't have the answer for that.
Yeah, so just like, it's a great question, Jen. Thank you for putting it on the table. The answer is, and I'll role play that with you. You know what, Jen, thank you so much for asking that question. It's actually a really great question. So I'm not wrong about the answer I give you, I would like to connect you with my team leader who kind of can give you the whole structure of what that would look like. Would you be okay taking his call later today or tomorrow? Right? Use those opportunities. Even if you know the answer, guys, it's a great pivot point to help your team leader then make an outbound phone call and have them actually take it. Because you've given them, they've given you this curiosity button that you're going to help them push. You're just not going to do it yourself. I can remember, goodness, I can't even remember who this was. We were in business with an agent who used to say things like, she knew what profit share was. She knew exactly how it worked. And when people would ask her on the outside about how profit share worked, she would answer, you know what, that's a great question. I'm not 100% sure about that. I know the details. All I know is that money shows up on the 21st of each month and I don't have to do a whole lot for it. However, my team leader knows all the details and would be happy to have that discussion with you. Let me, if I had him give you a shout later today or tomorrow, would you promise to take his call? So anytime a question comes up, use it. It's kind of like setting an appointment with an expired or with someone that you're prospecting for a listing or as a buyer. Like, don't have the entire appointment on the telephone. Even if you know the answers, pivot off of that and say things like, you know, great question. That's exactly why we have to meet. Great question. I'm not sure that I have all the details. Because here's the thing. If you have all the details and you answer all the questions, there's no reason for them to ever meet with your team leader. It's just that much harder for your team leader to use your relationship to get an appointment. We've all had it happen to us personally, right? I make an outbound call to Steve and Steve says, oh yeah, you know what? I don't have to meet with you because, you know, so-and-so in your office told me everything I needed to know. I'm good. I'm not interested. I can't move now. Or I am interested, I'll call you back, right? So what I would encourage you to do is know a whole lot less. You can know as much as you'd want, but outwardly, know a little bit less and use those questions as a way for you to create the appointment opportunity. Does that make sense? Dan Raposo, what do you got for us?
Yeah, just on that note too, you know, it also kind of reinforces that, you know, negative, you know, when our agents start answering other agents' questions and start talking about Keller Williams, it also kind of reinforces that negative perspective that a lot of agents have about KW, that it's all about recruiting here, right? Which I'm sure based on the responses people have had and the questions that people have had, like, I don't think our agents are really out there recruiting other agents, right? But as soon as you start answering agents' questions and having conversations about why they should join and what the process looks like and trying to answer those questions, whether you know the answers or not, now all of a sudden that agent is starting in their own head to think, oh, wow, okay, so it is all about recruiting there, right? Because like I couldn't answer any of these questions if somebody wanted to join William Ravis or William Pitt or whatever, right? So that's like part of the reason why like it's a lot easier to just take that completely off the table in your conversation with an agent, you know, and just say, you know what, that's a great, Rick's script is perfect. It's simple. It's easy, right? You know what, that's a great question, but you should really talk to my team leader about that. You know, would you take his call? Right. Anyway, I thought I would put that out there as well. Yeah.
It's a valid point, right? So know your role, right? Know your role. Because it's not to recruit. It's not to recruit. We've got very specific people who are very specifically trained and very specifically coached every single week to do that for you. You just have to create the relationships and give them an opportunity to get at bat, right? Here's another quick strategy I'll throw out there before. So if you have another question, somebody unmute and I'll take that question. Another quick strategy. Be on the lookout in your Uber rides, or, you know, when you get to go out to eat again, right? The awesome waiter or waitress that you had. So if you want other places to grow your downline, find awesome, talented people who aren't in real estate and convince them they should be in real estate. I would tell you, for the right person, I would pay to put them through real estate school. As long as they came and joined our company and named me as their sponsor, so I'm growing my downline by kind of creating that army of people, I would spend the $400 or $500, or tell them you'll reimburse it. Right after they join, that you'll reimburse it. But there's talent out there that isn't thinking about real estate that you can spot. You know who those people are, right? It's the person that just won't stop talking to you, and all you're trying to do is Uber from one place to the next, right? They'd be great in sales. It's the waiter or the waitress that you're like, oh my goodness, like you are awesome. Customer service, you are awesome. Make sense? What are the questions you have? We got 7 minutes left.
Rick, Dan, just a quick one. Did you
Yes,
say
sir.
that if you were to find a small realtor that they could keep their own name and not use the KW name?
So depending on the scenario, and I'll answer that generically because it really does depend on the scenario, but in certain circumstances, independent brokerages can operate relatively independently and still be a part of KW. It's kind of like a powered by. So if you have ABC Realty, that's been a mom and pop shop with 7 other agents, and it's been a mom and pop shop for 35 years, and mom and pop are kind of tired of doing it, and yet there's those 7 agents who you could set up a conversation with one of our team leaders and the mom and pop owner of that scenario, where we could create a version of them maintaining ABC Realty powered by Keller Williams Realty, and still have their own kind of world separate from the market center if they really want to be separate. Oftentimes what we find is as we talk with them about what we can offer them and their agents, they can't offer their agents any of that stuff. They don't have any technology platform. They don't have large events. They don't have trainings. They don't have any of the stuff that we have. And so what we oftentimes help them realize is that their agents will be more productive in our world. And so if they merge into us and those agents name them as sponsors in terms of profit share, that the more help we can give their agents to be more productive, the better they'll do from a profit sharing perspective. And there are some revenue sharing models that exist right now, so they don't have to necessarily let go of all of the company dollar from those people. But again, that's I even said more than I wanted to. There are scenarios there that are very specific based on who we're talking to and what that looks like and where they are. So there's lots of different versions of how this can work that your team leader can talk with those potentials around and kind of help work you into those conversations to solidify you. What else? Great question. Nada? That's it? All right, so if that's all the questions, let me end on this. And then I want like 5 ahas. So whoever wrote down notes, I want you to unmute and share 5 ahas before we finish. Let me say this in closing before we hit ahas. Please remember that building a profit share downline requires you to recognize that you and the person that you referred are not the only people on the planet, and you're oftentimes not the only person at Keller Williams that they know. So part of the volume in referrals to your team leader comes into play where you're not necessarily going to grab every single person, even if you brought them to the table, not because it's unfair and because there's weird things going on, but because if you were the impetus to get the appointment and they just have a better longer term relationship with somebody else, sometimes they choose that other person. And we can't arm wrestle them, right? It's an imperfect system because we rely on people to make choices. And you know what happens when you rely on people to make choices. Sometimes they make good choices and sometimes they make bad choices. Sometimes they make the right choice based on the facts and sometimes they don't. We can help guide people and ask certain questions to make sure that the right person is being named as much as we can. And yet I don't want you to think that just because you gave that person to so-and-so, that that's automatically your person. It's just not how it works, right? If they choose to name the team leader, well, your team leaders have a responsibility in most scenarios to step back and say, thank you, I appreciate that. And yet I do believe it was Linda Dunsmore who set up this initial meeting with us. Is that correct? Yes. Well, then great. It would be a great honor for me for you to name Linda, right? That's how your team leaders talk. But your colleagues, other people inside of KW, right? That person's cousin who happens to be KW in Des Moines, Iowa, those conversations are going to happen a whole lot less. And so I don't mean to end on a downer. I should have said this up front because now it's like, oh, everyone's like, oh, what a bummer. But I just want I want to be real, right? Because it's not always as simple as I gave oftentimes it is. And yet sometimes just be prepared that, again, we're not the only people on the planet. You have to look at it from the perspective of, okay, so if I didn't get that one, I'll get the next one. It just sometimes happens that way, right? All right, so what are your ahas? We'll take 5. Jen Davis.
My aha is to know less, KNOW less, and turn it over to the team leader.
Yeah, that's a good one. If that's all you guys got from this conversation today, it was worth the hour because it will help you help the team leaders and help the potential recruit move things forward faster. Great. Steve.
I liked what you said about saying to a person, you know, can I pass your name on, will you take the call? And I think maybe even to follow up a little further with that and explain, say, you know, I don't want to pass your name over and say we spoke today and then, you know, my team leader calls and you don't take the call. It kind of makes me look bad. So just to get a commitment from them to take the call, I thought was great.
Yeah, I love that. Mo Anderson's script is, will you promise me you'll take their call? Right? Because Sheila uses the word promise in there, because when people say yes to that, well, now it feels like, all right, now I promised, right? I didn't just say yes, I promised. It's like one step deeper into the I can't think of the word, but you know what I mean. Alice, rescue me.
Yes.
Know your role, and it's not to recruit.
Yeah, it's to do great real estate, right? That's what we're all here to do. We're here to be the best versions of ourselves possible, and certainly the best business owners that we can possibly be. Because I will tell you, when you start to list more than you had in the past, people start to notice. Oh, and here's one more tip I didn't give earlier. Even if it's unconnected, even if it's disconnected, I'm now making up words, even if it's disconnected to anything at KW, you would be smart strategically to, as I said, event drop, success drop, results drop. And what I mean by that is if you came from someplace else and you're looking to have conversations and you just had your best year ever, whether it had anything to do with KW or not, attribute it to that. You know what? In the first year after I left so-and-so and came to KW, I had my best year. You don't have to go further than that. You don't have to talk about the pandemic. If you had a great year last year, connect it somehow to being here. Because what that does is it allows people to understand that they can't do what you did unless they do what you did and they are where you are, right? If you just simply say, oh yeah, it was a great year and the pandemic gave me my best results ever, well, they could be anywhere and have great results via a pandemic in their mind. So you should always hang it on the hook of KW if you want people to be attracted to you and where you are. It's an important concept, right? Even if it's a stretch. And yet all you have to do, if it didn't have anything to do with KW, is add just a little smidge in the beginning of a script that says, you know, somebody in my office shared with me the other day X, or I attended a training in my office the other day and I learned Y. I was coaching with my team leader the other day and heard this. I was in my productivity coaching program and got this nugget, right? So you're hanging it on the hook that's related to KW so that people understand that there's benefit to your business for being here. All right, we were up to 3, so 2 more and then we're out. Yes, Stuart.
Hey, Rick, that actually worked for me. My friend Heather down in Georgia, she contacted me without talking about profit share, obviously, but she was like, hey, had my best year ever. She actually left KW, then she came back. She said, it's just a great place to work for. So that you know.
Love it.
Down.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And congratulations on your Super Bowl win. I think I saw Nelly too, right? So Nelly, you and Nelly were part of our winners last night on the Super Bowl pool. Great job. You clearly are seeing those numbers exactly the way you needed to, even though it was all random. But who has to know that? All right, who's going to take us out? One last aha. Go ahead, Nancy Manby.
The invitation creates the relationship, whether they attend or not.
Yeah, so true, so true. So your homework is, based on Nancy's aha, your homework is go and invite at least 3 or 5 people who are social media or should be social media, excited by social media, to Lucy Parker's training tomorrow. It's not too late. Real estate agents don't plan anyway. So call them today and just say, hey, you know what? Just jump on for an hour tomorrow. Here's how you get on. And you still have an opportunity this week. You're running out of time. There's like 4 more days for you to reach out and invite somebody to family reunion to be your guest. It's $80 that we're covering. Even if we weren't covering it, it's an $80 that if you can spend 80 to get someone to experience family reunion and start a conversation with our team leaders, guess what? That $80 comes back to you pretty quickly over time. All right, guys, I hope this was helpful. I hope it was different. And I hope that it gives you an opportunity to take 2021 and grow your downline. We'll see you later.